5, 4, 3, 2, 1, adelante!
When I was racing go-karts full-time, the dream was to race overseas. That's where all the Formula 1 drivers made their mark at a young age, and it's where the top tier of competition lives. It was always out of reach for me though, and I never got the chance to fulfill that goal. Now, some years later, I was finally getting set to race in Europe, just not quite in the way I might have envisioned in years past. For my third ultramarathon, I'd be travelling to the Spanish Canary Islands for the Tenerife Bluetrail 73k by UTMB. Combining my passions for travelling and trail running was an exciting prospect, and I was excited to explore a part of the world that I'd never visited before. Before I found this race a few months beforehand, I didn't even know where in the world Tenerife was. Upon discovering that although it is part of Spain, it is actually a fairly small island off the coast of Morocco with a unique landscape, I was intrigued and decided to give this race a shot. Since the Arches 50-miler 5 months earlier, I'd taken the time to train and try and improve on the areas I'd struggled with. With some jet lag and unfamiliar territory thrown into the mix, this was sure to be a fun one. With my scheduled flight going from Denver to Dallas to Madrid to Tenerife, things got off to a rocky start as my Denver to Dallas flight was delayed, eating into my already tight layover time in Dallas. I would just need to hold my breath for no further delays. I was hit with another delay, and things were transforming into a travel nightmare as my Dallas flight was now delayed to the point where I'd miss my connecting flight to Madrid. The alternative flight American Airlines automatically booked me onto was totally ludicrous, with 5 layovers with impossibly short connection times, which would have inevitably got me stranded somewhere in the world between Denver and Tenerife. After an hour-long exchange between me and a very helpful American Airlines service representative, I managed to get rebooked onto a much more reasonable flight with a single layover in Dublin, albeit I'd have to wait another 24 hours to board. All I could do was come back tomorrow for attempt number 2.
Oh Lord, hey, I haven't had that one. I get A and B.
Glad to have gotten a full night's sleep in my own bed rather than getting stranded at some random airport in Europe, I returned to Denver Airport hoping for better luck this time around. I was born in Ireland, and the 3-hour layover in Dublin Airport I'd have in about 9 hours' time would be my first time back there in almost 20 years. Although I wouldn't get to leave the airport, I was looking forward to be making a quick stop in my homeland. Thankfully, everything proceeded on time, and we were soon on our way. Having landed in Dublin, I now hoped for no hiccups with my next leg of the trip, which would take me straight to Tenerife.
Adam, brilliant. Back step, please. Okay, thank you.
There were no further delays, and we were soon bound for Tenerife. After a quick debacle where I thought the airline had lost my luggage, but really found they had just sent it to the wrong baggage claim, I went to grab my rental car. Once I eventually found the correct car, I set off for my Airbnb in Puerto de la Cruz. I'd arrived 24 hours later than planned, but I was just glad that I'd been able to make it here. Now it was time to rest before packet pickup, my shakeout run, and a final supplies run tomorrow. My late arrival meant my trip was a bit more condensed than originally planned, with only one day to make all the preparations and do a bit of exploring before race day on Saturday. After a quick breakfast, I drove straight to the race expo. With this being my first race away from Mad Moose in Moab, the scale of UTMB as an organisation was starting to become apparent. Having never been to a trail running expo like this before, I felt a bit like a kid in a candy shop. I couldn't waste too much time though, as I had a lot to get through. With packet pickup done, I wanted to explore a part of the island we wouldn't see during the race, and complete a shakeout run in the process. It felt special to have one of my passions bring me to a part of the world I might otherwise have never seen, and to have the chance to explore it in one of my favourite ways, on my feet, on some trails. After a quick 3 miles, it was back into town to pick up some supplies before dinner. I took the chance after dinner to go and see the finish line we'd be crossing the next day, and to find the shuttle pickup area, where I'd hop on a bus up to the start line at 3 in the morning. With so much to get done, time had gotten away from me a little bit, and once again, I'd left it too late to get my gear ready. It was a bit of a rush to get everything prepared, but at this point, with a 3 AM shuttle pickup time, adequate sleep was pretty much out of the question. UTMB races have quite an extensive list of required gear, and although I'd made sure to have everything, what I failed to consider was how I'd managed to fit it all in my 6-litre running pack. Still, as a newcomer to ultra running, I didn't realise how small my running pack was compared to what I really needed, so I'd have to learn that lesson the hard way with some Tetris. Eventually, with a nicely overstuffed running pack, I got it all figured out. However, I'd only left myself 2 to 3 hours to actually sleep, so I'd have to try and get whatever rest I could. The race would start in the small town of Villaflor before heading up towards the Teide National Park, where we'd be surrounded by a unique volcanic landscape across some rugged terrain. After that, we would leave the national park and head back down into the forest with a grueling 8,000-foot descent back to sea level. After one final climb, we'd be back on the coast and make some final miles towards the finish line in the town of Puerto de la Cruz. 43 miles of technical terrain laid ahead, and little did I know what I was getting myself into. Thanks to some pre-race nerves and most likely also jet lag, I'm not sure if I actually slept. At best, I may have gotten half an hour or so, but it certainly felt like I'd gotten no sleep at all. There wasn't anything I could do about it now though, and I just had to push through and get ready to catch the shuttle to Villaflor. After an hour or so on the shuttle, we arrived at a surprisingly cool Villaflor, where we now stood at 4,000 feet after coming from sea level at my Airbnb.
Y en breve, bienvenidos a Villaflor de Chasna. Hey, manos arriba! Hands up, everybody! Hey, hey! Are you?
The energy at the start line was electric, and it got me fired up and ready to take on the 43 miles in front of me.
7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, adelante! Arranca la Tenerife Bluetrail 73k. Arranca la aventura en Villaflor de Chasna. Nuestros corredores se ponen en marcha, en movimiento. The adventure is starting right now. All of our runners are going to Puerto de la Cruz.
A short downhill road section made it a fast start, but it didn't take long for the climbing to begin. the ascent began into what would feel like a different planet. The climb out of Villaflor had taken us into some of the most unique and incredible scenery I'd ever witnessed. The 4,000-foot ascent was grueling and unlike anything I'd experienced before, but it really played into my strengths as I'd passed an abundance of people. We had now entered the Teide National Park at about 8,000 feet elevation, where we'd run around the base of the third largest volcano in the world. I came into the Parador aid station just as the early race adrenaline had worn off. The biggest thing I'd struggled with at my last race was proper fueling, and I was trying to improve on that this time. Coming out of Parador, however, I may have overdone it and eaten too much too quickly, causing me to feel nauseous. This took a while to go away and really dampened my appetite. Having taken in the incredible sights of the Teide National Park, we began the long descent back down to sea level. The nausea had subsided, but I'd stopped eating since leaving Parador a couple of hours ago. My energy level began to dwindle. Now, 6 hours into the race, I'd hit a low point. The nausea from early in the race had destroyed my appetite, and my energy stores had been depleted. I recognized this and tried to take in some calories, but things were at the point where the taste of food only made the idea of eating more repulsive. I had no idea there could be so much downhill on a course. Going from an altitude of 8,000 feet straight down to sea level on technical terrain was a totally new experience, and my legs were feeling the pain. As the ocean slowly came back into sight, it felt like a light now sat at the end of the tunnel. Since leaving the Parador aid station, it had been a brutal but beautiful 23 miles, as the Teide National Park truly is one of the most unique sights in the world. Having conquered a monstrous descent through the clouds, it felt like the worst was behind us. Already being at sea level with about 10 miles to go, I pictured a leisurely run along the coast to the finish, but little did I know what laid ahead just after we reached the base de Asomedero.
You up there? At least I'm better with uphill than I am with downhill.
Yeah, downhill is killing my quads.
Yeah.
I never practiced for this.
Yeah.
Just as I thought that we'd seen the last of the major hills, I realized that we were about to hit the final major climb of the race up the mighty Asomedero. My body was already suffering, but I had to push through. I'd never experienced such a steep climb in my life, and it felt like it just kept going and going with no end in sight. It did, however, play into my strengths, and I felt a second wind hit me as I passed 20 to 30 people just in this section. After climbing 2,000 feet in less than 1.5 miles, we topped out in the clouds. The humidity and misty rain meant it was an extremely precarious descent, as the mud felt more like ice at times and I slid my way down. I later found out that shortly after I passed through this section, a runner behind me had slipped and broken their leg. After successfully navigating a slipping slide made of mud, it finally started to feel like the end was getting closer, as we could now see the finish in Puerto de la Cruz in the distance.
Ahí está Adam, ahí lo tenemos, aprovechen el agua, está Eduardo también. Y ahí tenemos a Rubén.
El Asomedero had been no joke, and I was glad to have it behind me. We would now have 5 miles of mostly rolling terrain with some short climbs along the coast to take us to the finish, but this far into such a demanding race, 5 miles feels more like 50. While the volcanic scenery up in Teide had been stunning, the sights along the coast were picturesque in their own way, despite how laborious every step felt at this point. As we made our way into the town of Puerto de la Cruz, the adventure was nearing its end.
Último kilómetro para Adam. From USA. 1 kilometer more.
Having come all the way from Villaflor, it was a special feeling to come back to Puerto de la Cruz, where I'd hopped on a shuttle at 3 a.m. that morning. People sitting in restaurants cheered on runners, which was a totally new experience for me. From nearly not having a flight here to having no sleep the night before, to grossly underestimating the rigor of the terrain, I'd overcome some level of odds to make it to this finish line, which made it all the sweeter.
Oportunidad para Rylance. El norteamericano.
Finishing in a time of 10 hours and 56 minutes, I placed 124th out of 445 runners. After taking a few minutes to let my heart rate go down, it was nice to have a quick chat with one of the few other Americans I'd seen on course, until an intense wave of nausea came over me and I had to head back to my Airbnb. The 1 mile walk from the finish line to my Airbnb was probably the most difficult mile of the day. I was a little worried about what things would look like when taking my shoes off, but my feet were actually in better shape than I expected. After taking a much needed shower and washing all the dirt off, I went out for an equally much needed meal. With the finish line being right here in town, I went to cheer on some of the finishers making their way to the line. After that, all that was left to do was to catch up on some desperately needed sleep. It was my last full day in Tenerife, and I wanted to take the chance to take in last views of the island before heading home. The views of the Teide National Park were still at the front of my mind, so I decided to drive up there and take in some of the sights without having a race to run. For some active recovery, I went on various short walking paths to keep the blood flowing in my legs and reduce the stiffness ahead of the long flight home tomorrow. Just as any race does, Saturday's 73k had taught me some lessons and left me with much to reflect on. The importance of trying to maximize sleep the night before a race was a big one, and I'm sure an extra few hours of rest would have gone a long way on race day. The other thing was that nutrition was still an area where I had a lot of room for improvement. Although I'd tried to eat enough early in the race, I didn't follow a consistent enough eating schedule, and when I took in too much too fast at Parador, that derailed my plan for the rest of the race and left me struggling. The final thing which stood out the most is that European trail running is not to be underestimated. Although this was not the longest course I've run, it was by far the hardest so far, with the most steep, technical, and sustained ascents and descents of any trail I had ever seen in my life. As brutal and physically demanding as it was, it left me wanting to see what else is out there in the global ultra running scene. Above anything else though, being able to combine my passion for running and traveling, and getting to experience a new part of the world had been an incredible experience, and it reaffirmed my commitment to this sport. Now heading back home to Colorado, we would now inch closer to my ultimate goal for the year, as my first 100 miler was on the horizon.